Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive.
Yes, welcome back.
Today, we're going really deep into this fascinating PhD thesis from 2020 that you sent to us.
Yes.
It's by Kunzang, Peden Bhutia, and it explores the educational choices and challenges faced by Bhutia tribe students in Sikkim, India.
Right in the heart of the Himalayas.
Yeah, so we're going to really try to unpack the core influences, aspirations, and hurdles these students face.
I think it's a very rich source of information.
Yeah, definitely.
It's going to give us a real on-the-ground understanding of what's happening there.
Absolutely. And just to give everyone a bit of context, the Bhutia community, they're one of the main ethnic groups in Sikkim.
Alongside the Lepchas and Nepalese, yeah.
Right, exactly. And they actually have a really interesting way of referring to themselves.
They do.
They call themselves Lopo, or sometimes Loris.
Which translates to the dwellers of the southward.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Beautiful, isn't it?
So poetic.
Very evocative.
Our mission today in this deep dive is to really figure out what are the factors that shape the educational decisions for Bhutia students.
Especially in senior secondary school in Sikkim.
Yeah, and of course the difficulties they face along the way.
And this thesis also explores the development of education within the Bhutia community since 1975.
Right, from sort of like a historical perspective.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so one thing that really stood out to me about this thesis
Yeah.
was that it uses this unique methodology called grounded theory.
Which is great because it means that the findings and theories emerged directly from the interviews and interactions with the people involved.
So the students.
The students, their parents, teachers, even community members.
Wow, so we're getting a real like first-person perspective here.
Exactly. First-hand accounts from the people who were living and breathing these experiences.
Okay, so let's jump right in and start looking at some of the key influences on the educational choices these students are making.
Sure.
And the first one that Bhutia highlights is the role of teachers.
Teachers seem to play a huge role.
Yeah.
Around 10 students in this study specifically mentioned teachers as encouraging them, offering guidance on subject selections and future studies.
So they're not just, teaching the subject matter, but they're actually acting as mentors.
Absolutely.
That's great.
And I think we have a quote here from one student who says, "My teacher teaches us political science subject so well, I like to attend political science classes.
Okay.
I always talk to my teacher regarding my studies after school.
Right.
He always guides me in choosing a subject and planning for further studies after schooling also."
So that's a very clear example of a teacher going above and beyond.
Yeah, it's that individual attention and guidance that can make a huge difference.
Right, and building that rapport with the student. Now,
Exactly.
obviously, family also plays a massive role, right?
Huge, yeah. 9 students cited family influence as a major factor in their educational choices.
I mean, that's got to be expected.
Makes sense, right?
Who are we without our families?
Yeah, and one student mentioned being inspired by their cousin, who is a lawyer,
Oh, interesting.
which then influenced their own subject choices, leading them towards a potential career in law.
Right. So is it like having a role model?
A living, breathing example of what's possible within their own family.
Exactly. And seeing that like success story firsthand.
Definitely.
Now, this next one I thought was really fascinating. The influence of media?
This was an interesting one
I know.
because about 7 students mentioned media as being influential, particularly when it came to non-traditional career paths.
So not necessarily, going the academic route.
Exactly.
So what were some of the specific areas that media seemed to spark an interest in?
Well, a few students mentioned the Defense Force being inspired by things they saw in movies.
Yeah, I can totally see that, like those action-packed,
Yeah.
military films.
Yeah, the heroism and the adventure.
Play.
And then there were sports and dance as well.
Okay.
Students mentioned cricket, football, and dance as areas where they were inspired by figures they saw on television. They talked about wanting to join local clubs or even pursue professional careers in these fields.
It's so powerful how just seeing someone doing something, on a screen can really spark that ambition.
Yeah, it makes it feel attainable somehow.
Definitely.
Like it plants that seed of possibility.
Right. And it's not just, watching the sport. It's seeing someone who maybe looks like them or comes from a similar background.
Absolutely. Representation matters.
Yeah.
And the last area where media had an influence was food service and hospitality.
Okay, so like cooking shows, travel shows, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So they're seeing these chefs traveling the world, creating amazing dishes.
And that sparked dreams of becoming chefs themselves and exploring new cultures through food.
It's really interesting how media can open up these whole new worlds and possibilities.
It broadens their horizons for sure.
Now, besides teachers and family and the media, the thesis also talks about the influence of peers.
Right, their friends and classmates.
So how did that play out?
Well, there were instances where students decided to take the same subjects or courses as their friends.
Oh, so like just doing things together?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes just for the companionship or because they were introduced to new opportunities through their friends.
Makes sense.
It's that social aspect of learning and growing together.
Totally. But then there were also these students who showed this incredible self-confidence and persistence in pursuing their own path.
Those are the go-getters.
Yeah.
One student, for example, had this unwavering determination to join the Army,
Wow.
despite failing the physical test twice after Class X.
Oh, no.
They were determined to improve their fitness and try again after their board exams.
So impressive.
It's that grit and resilience that can really make a difference.
It really can. And then in terms of like overall aspirations, the thesis found a pretty wide range.
Absolutely.
Some students had very clear plans for higher education, like wanting to become lawyers or pursue a PhD in Bhutia language.
They had their sights set high.
Yeah, whereas others maybe lacked interest in further study or even awareness of all the options out there.
Right. So there was this spectrum of ambition and uncertainty.
And I imagine that uncertainty can lead to some of the challenges these students face when making these educational choices.
Definitely.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about some of the conundrums and challenges.
The hurdles they have to overcome.
Yeah, and one of the biggest ones that Bhutia highlights is confusion.
Confusion about which subjects to choose, what path to take, what the future holds.
Right. I mean, there are so many options. It can be overwhelming.
Totally. And we have a quote here from one student who perfectly captures this feeling of confusion.
Okay.
They say, I face confusion while choosing a subject. I used to like economics subject, but I did not choose it. I heard that the subject is very vast and equally hard.
Oh, wow.
So I had confusion in choosing a subject. Instead of economics, I selected physical education.
Right. So they're getting all this external input and then second-guessing themselves.
Exactly. It's that analysis paralysis.
Yeah. And then on top of that, sometimes their own interests clash with what their parents want for them.
That's a tough one.
Right. Like one student in the thesis wanted to pursue a culinary career.
But their parents had different expectations.
Oh, I can imagine that causing some tension.
Definitely creates a difficult situation for the student caught between following their passion and honoring their family's wishes.
And it's not always just about differing opinions. Sometimes it's a lack of awareness about all the different options.
Yeah, some students were just unaware of the various subjects and career paths that were out there.
So they might be limiting themselves without even realizing it.
Absolutely, which highlights the need for better guidance and counseling.
Right, like career fairs or mentorships.
Exactly, expose them to a wider range of possibilities.
And then there's this general sense of uncertainty that some students express.
Feeling unsure about their choices and their future prospects.
Like not really having a clear direction.
Yeah, and this uncertainty can sometimes stem from external suggestions that conflict with their own inclinations.
So they're getting pulled in different directions.
Exactly.
And then there are those who just struggle to make any decision at all.
They're stuck in that indecisive phase.
Yeah, lacking clear goals or even a strong sense of their own abilities.
Which is understandable at that age.
Oh, definitely.
It's a time of exploration and self-discovery.
And then there's this really concerning issue that Bhutia brings up, no parental concern.
This refers to situations where parents are not really engaged or involved in their children's education.
Oh, wow.
And the thesis suggests that this lack of involvement could be linked to socioeconomic challenges.
Right. So if parents are struggling to make ends meet, they might not have the time or energy to focus on their kids' schooling.
Exactly. Basic survival needs take precedence.
It's heartbreaking, but it's a reality for many families.
And then there's this really interesting challenge that's specific to the Bhutia community, an identity problem related to their mother tongue.
Okay, explain that one.
So some Bhutia students actually lack fluency in their own mother tongue.
Oh, wow.
While they identify as Bhutia Nepali is often the dominant language at home and in school.
So they're losing that connection to their cultural heritage.
Right, which can lead to feelings of disconnect and even impact their sense of belonging within the community.
It's like a piece of their identity is missing.
And we have a quote here from a student who says, I'm from Bhutia family, and I do not have fluency in Bhutia language.
Okay.
I like Bhutia subject, but I study Nepali in school. We do not speak our language at home.
It's sad to think that their own language is becoming less prominent.
Yeah, it's a reminder of how cultural shifts and language policies can impact communities.
Definitely. And then there's the issue of motivation, or rather a lack of motivation to continue studying.
And this can stem from various factors.
Like what?
Well, financial pressures for one,
Hmm.
Students might feel the need to start earning money right away.
Right, to support themselves or their families, or
Exactly.
they might just be more interested in vocational paths.
Hands-on learning and skills training. And, of course, we can't forget about the demands of household work.
Especially for girls.
Yes, girls often bear a heavier burden of domestic responsibilities, which can limit their study time and impact their aspirations.
It's a constant balancing act.
It is. And then underlying all of this is the very real impact of socioeconomic status.
Right, because financial constraints can really limit a student's choices.
Absolutely. They might have to prioritize earning over learning.
And we have another quote here from a student who says, "Because of the low financial conditions of my family, I do not have any interest in studying after completing class 12."
So their circumstances are dictating their path.
Yeah, it's not always about a lack of ambition, it's about a lack of opportunity.
Sadly, that's often the case.
And finally, the thesis also touches on the role of siblings.
Yeah, specifically the lack of positive influence from siblings in some cases.
So if older siblings haven't pursued further education or don't seem to value academics,
It can negatively impact the younger sibling's motivation.
it's like they're not seeing that example of what's possible. So we've talked about all these challenges, but the thesis also explores the development of education within the Bhutia community since 1975.
Right, kind of tracing that historical journey.
And they do this through interviews with key figures who were pioneers in various fields.
Exactly. So we get these firsthand accounts of the progress and changes they witnessed.
It's like living history.
Yeah. And these pioneers demonstrate a significant expansion of Bhutia representation across diverse professional fields since 1975.
That's great to hear.
It really showcases the community's resilience and growing engagement with broader Indian society.
So who were some of these individuals that really stood out?
Well, in literature and education, we have figures like late Lopan Tashidin Sapa and late Kinrod Pelger Citrichin,
Okay.
who were instrumental in promoting Bhutia language and literature.
Right, keeping that cultural heritage alive.
Exactly. And then there's present-day scholars like Dr. Riksing Norbu Bhutia and Dr. Namdul Bhutia, who are continuing that important work.
It's so crucial to have those champions for language and culture.
Absolutely.
What about other fields?
In traditional arts, Laripa Gandan Lama is noted as the first to initiate traditional arts from his village.
Okay.
And in politics, we have Kazi Lendup Dorji Kengsarpa, who was the first chief minister of Sikkim after its annexation.
Wow.
And Sri Karmagampu Lama was the first minister elected to the Sangha seat representing the monastic community.
So they were really breaking down barriers.
Definitely paving the way for future generations.
And there are so many more.
Oh, yes. P.T. Gyamtso had a long career in the Sikkim government press.
Okay.
Late Sonam Gyatso Sherpa achieved great success in mountaineering and later went into politics.
Wow.
Mira Lama has had an extensive career in law and human rights.
That's incredible.
And of course, we can't forget about Baichung Bhutia in sports. His contributions to Indian football are immense.
He's a legend.
And even in Bollywood, we have Danny Densongpa, who's recognized as the first Bhutia to make a mark.
It's amazing to see that representation across so many different areas.
It really speaks to the community's talent and ambition.
Absolutely. So let's bring it back to the thesis. What are some of the key theoretical findings that Bhutia highlights?
Well, the central finding, as we discussed earlier, is that educational choices for these Bhutia students are primarily influenced by teachers, family, and media.
Right, those three key factors.
Exactly.
And what about gender? Did the thesis find any significant differences between boys and girls?
Interestingly, no gender was not a significant factor in the educational choices among these students.
Oh, wow. So both boys and girls were equally ambitious and had similar aspirations.
Exactly, which is a very positive finding.
It is.
And then the thesis emphasizes the crucial role of educational aspiration itself.
So those students who had higher aspirations were more likely to pursue further studies.
Exactly. They had that drive and that vision for their future.
And finally, socioeconomic status. How did that play into the overall picture?
Well, as we saw earlier, it does have a very real impact.
Yeah.
Students from higher socioeconomic backgrounds tend to have clearer aspirations and more support to pursue further studies.
Right, they have more resources and opportunities.
Exactly, whereas students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds face more barriers.
Okay, so to wrap things up, what are some of the key takeaways that you think our listeners should keep in mind from this deep dive?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the educational journeys of these Bhutia students in Sikkim are shaped by a really complex interplay of factors.
Right, it's not just one thing, it's a combination of influences and challenges.
Exactly. There's the vital guidance from teachers and family, the growing influence of media, and then the very real impact of individual aspirations and family resources.
And all of that against the backdrop of these historical changes that the Bhutia community has gone through.
Right, and I think the challenges faced by these students resonate with broader discussions about educational equity and access.
Absolutely, because even though this study focuses on a specific community in Sikkim, the issues they face are relevant to students all over the world.
Yeah, things like confusion about choices, conflicting expectations, and socioeconomic barriers. These are universal challenges in education.
Definitely. So as we end this deep dive, here's a final thought for our listeners to ponder.
I'm listening.
Give you this blend of traditional influences and modern aspirations. How can educational systems be designed to better support students from diverse cultural backgrounds?
That's a great question.
What role can technology and more targeted guidance play in bridging the gap between their aspirations and the opportunities that are available to them?
It's something we all need to be thinking about.
Definitely. And for those of you who want to delve even deeper into this topic,
Yeah.
the full PhD thesis by Kunzang, Peden, Bhutia is a fantastic resource.
It offers a wealth of detailed information and analysis on the educational landscape in Sikkim and the experiences of the Bhutia community.
So we encourage you to check it out.
It's a fascinating read for anyone interested in education and cultural studies.
All right, that's it for this episode of The Deep Dive.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.